I was born in 1961. I'm 64 years old and I have been lifting weights for over 50 years. And one of the most useful programming tools I have ever come across is the rule of 2.5. The rule of 2.5 is pretty simple. It simply states that when you do a multi-rep max, each rep is worth 2.5% from your 1 rep max. What that means is, say you do 160 pounds and you do a multi-rep max and you get 8 reps. 8 times 2.5 is 20, which means that 160 pounds is 20% less than your 1 rep max, or 80%. Now, most people have no trouble at all going from their 1 rep max and saying, I want to lift an 80 or 90% weight. You just multiply the decimal and you got your number. The problem they run into is when they're doing, like we just did, the example of 160 pounds for 8 reps, and they try and calculate their 1 rep max from that. Because what most people will do is say, oh, it's 20% less. 20% times 160 is 32. You add the 32 to the 160, and now you have 192. That's not right. The correct way to do it is to divide the weight lifted by the decimal equivalent of the percentage that you came up with. So in this case, the decimal equivalent of 80% is 0.8. You divide 160 by 0.8, and you will come up with 200 pounds. The beauty of the rule of 2.5 is it allows you to create very precise programs that specify the weights and the load without having to actually say what the weight is. You can say you want somebody to do, or you want to do 4 reps with 80%, or 4 reps with 75% or 85%. It allows you to also know how difficult each set is likely to be. So if you're doing an 80%, we're just looking at 80%, a max rep set with 80% is 8 reps. So if you've got 80% and you have it listed at 80% set for 6 reps, that's going to be less. You're able to adjust your load. Now, what I really like to do with the rule of 2.5 is use it for increasing the 1 rep max. Because what you can do is you can build the equivalent strength and then work up to that 1 rep max. So for instance, earlier this spring, I was working up to 405. The first weight I started to work with was 335. Now I got up to 10 reps with 335. I did that 2 workouts in a row. I always do it 2 workouts in a row because sometimes you just have a great workout and you want to make sure it's a real gain, not a temporary gain. And 10 reps with 335 actually calculates out to a little bit more than 335. But with back squats in particular, the rule of 2.5 can be very generous. So I like to have a little cushion, especially when 335 is only around 70% or so of the weight I'm actually looking for. When you get up to the 80, 85, it gets even more accurate. Remember, 2.5, this rule is a general rule. It'll differ slightly from person to person and exercise to exercise. So anyways, I get up to 2 workouts in a row with 10 reps at 335. Now, theoretically, I have the strength to do 405, but jumping from 335 to 405 is not going to work out very well. It's just such a different lift. When you take the weight out, physically, psychologically, you need to kind of get a little practice at that heavy stuff, not jump from a 70 to 100%. So I decided the next weight I was going to work with was 365. 365, it's closer. I'm going to look for 5 reps with 365. Once I got that, 2 reps with 385. And notice I'm creeping up towards my goal. I'm getting used to that heavier weight. And every time I make a jump, I'm making sure that I'm demonstrating the strength for the 1 rep max that I want. And after 385 for 2, I was able to do the 405 that I wanted. Now, working from the example that I started out with of 160 pounds for 8 reps being a 200-pound 1 rep max, say you want to increase, you're doing that with a bench press, you're doing 200, you want to get to 220. How would you set up, this stepped increase in strength and get the reps and load, build that 220 strength? Well, you could stick with the 160. You would need about 11 reps with 160 to be good for a 220 1 rep max. Now, I don't think that's a great idea because, again, we're down and that's around 71, 72% or so, which is pretty far away. You kind of want to get into the 80+% before you try and go for that 1 rep max. So what you might do instead is say, hey, what's 80% of 220? 80% of 220 is 175. So your target weight you're going to design into your programs is to achieve 8 reps with 175. Once you get to the 8 reps with 175, you've demonstrated the strength, you've got the 220, you can go up another 15 pounds. Now we'll go up to 190. Now you're going to need somewhere around a strong 5 or a barely squeaking it through 6 with 190 to have the strength to go to 220, to have demonstrated the strength to go to 220. Now 190 probably is close enough to make the jump, but I think I would probably want to put one more jump in there and go up to 205, another 15 pounds, and I'll need real solid 2 or 3 reps with 205, and then you're ready to take your 220. You've demonstrated, you've built the strength all the way, plus you've worked with the heavy weights enough so that you will be prepared to take that 1 rep max. Now, of course, you can use this in other ways. If you're doing your lifting for other sports, you can adjust your load based on this rule of 2.5 so that in your competitive time of the year, you're holding back a bit on your weightlifting. You're going to do like, say, 6 reps with your 80% weights or 2 reps with your 90% weights or something like that. You're not going to really drive yourself all the way because you've got to save your energy for your sport. But then when you're in your training, you can ramp it up and really push for those multi-rep maxes to try and increase your strength to get ready for the next season. You can do the same thing if you're doing building for mass, because again, you know how much load you're putting on your body. You know what to expect with the weight that you're going to perform. What is a genuine effort? Because I've talked about this before. You have to create adaptive stress. You have to stress your body enough for it to respond. And this rule of 2.5 really gives you a way to see that you're actually achieving that and getting the kind of stress you need to progress without overdoing it. Plus, it is really simple to do. Again, you're just going to be you're not going to be writing out weights. You're going to be writing out X% with X number of weights. Set up your program off of that. Now, the rule of 2.5 does take a little getting used to. You have to kind of play with it a bit to figure it out. But honestly, once you get the hang of it, it is a very quick, easy, accurate way to create workouts that give you the load that you want, that will help you achieve the goals that you are pursuing.
Enjoyed the video? Please like, comment, share, and subscribe.